Welcome back to Dude, We Can Fix It. Today, I'm going to show you how to change the transmission fluid in your car. Let's get started. So you're going to want to drive the car around for 15 to 20 minutes to get the transmission fluid up to temperature. Now that we've done that, we're going to pull the transmission dipstick and just check and see what the fluid looks like. So we can see the color difference between the new and the old fluid. We want our fluid to be bright and red like this, not dingy and dirty looking like that. We're going to keep the dipstick out, that way the fluid will drain more quickly out the bottom of the pan. So now we're under the car and we need to locate the transmission oil pan. This is the transmission oil pan and the transmission oil drain plug. Over here, we have the engine oil pan and the engine oil drain plug. So don't get these mixed up. Generally, the transmission oil pan will have a different, not so common sort of plug. So this one is a 10 millimeter hex. So we'll use our hex wrench and we'll loosen this up and drain this into a pan. You can see how dark this transmission fluid is, and that's no bueno. At this point, if your goal was just to change your transmission fluid, you could go ahead and let this drain out, put the plug back in, and then refill your transmission. You can look in your drain pan and see how many quart drained out of your transmission, and you can add that much fluid back in. And that makes it a lot easier to get it really close, and then all you gotta do is top it off. Now, if you're trying to drop the pan, clean it, change your transmission oil filter, and flush out your transmission oil cooler, then the next step is going to be to drop the transmission oil pan. So we're going to remove all of these 10 millimeter bolts. Here is our transmission oil filter. We can see that the new one we have is the same size, shape, and will fit directly in right there. This has a wire that is being held on, so we'll go ahead and just pry that open and move that out the way. And we'll take out these 3 10 millimeter bolts that are holding this on. So this car has 540 something thousand miles on it. I've had this car for over 10 years, but this is the original engine and original transmission. I do tend to change the transmission fluid every 50,000 miles just to keep up with it. So for anyone that doesn't believe that changing your transmission fluid can extend the life of your transmission, I disagree, and this is my evidence. Yeah, this car went completely underwater in the flood of 2016 here in Louisiana. It was underwater for 3 days. After the flood, I drained all the fluids multiple times and refilled them, ran it, drained them some more. That was surprising. Use a little bit of this old oil and just lubricate this gasket and this mating surface and make sure that this mates up in this hole and gets a good seal. There we go. I felt it pop in just a little bit. Mary Poppins in there. It's always a good idea to go ahead and thread all these bolts in loosely by hand. That way you make sure your alignment is correct and then tighten them up. Now a transmission is all aluminum. So using a drill or impact, you do need to be very, very careful that you don't over tighten it and strip anything out. Don't over tighten these. It would definitely be advisable to get a torque spec and torque these back in. What I'm doing is getting them snug, just snug, and then going another 1/8 of a turn, which is right there. Now let's clean out the oil pan and then we'll put it back in. So here's our oil pan. I don't always drop the oil pan when I do a fluid change on the transmission. However, I like to do it every other time because you have a couple of magnets in here. So these magnets collect all the metal shavings that are coming from the wear and tear in your transmission. And it's very important to clean all of this stuff off. So now we just need to wipe out the inside of this pan to get any other debris out of here. If you have any brake cleaner, this would be a great time to go ahead and spray this down and make sure this is spotless before you put it back on. So now that we have the pan cleaned out, let's go ahead and remove this gasket. It may be stuck on there like this. This one's been on there for a while. There we go. Yeah, I'm sure the cold isn't helping this rubber be malleable. All right, now all we got to do is clean this entire surface and give this one more wipe down, and then we'll go reinstall it in the car. All right, we have our gasket. Make sure that it fits and lines up with all the holes. Once again, make sure that we have our 2 magnets in the correct locations. I'm going to go ahead and put some of these bolts in here and through the gasket. They're pretty snug on the gasket, so they're actually gonna help hold this in place as we set it on there. Before we place the pan back on, we need to make sure to clean this mating surface. So using a clean paper towel, wipe it all down, make sure you get all this debris off of there. And when you're wiping stuff like this, always wipe from the inside out, not the outside in. All right, now we're gonna put the drain plug in and fill it up. So we're gonna take and put our drain pan on a nice level surface, and on the back of the drain pan, there's some gradients here, and it will tell you how many quarts of fluid is in the pan. So we're just below 3 quarts of transmission fluid. So we're going to add the same amount of fluid that's in this pan of new fluid into the transmission. So we have some full synthetic Dexron 3, which is what this vehicle takes. This is actually full synthetic multi-vehicle. I believe it's Dexron 3, Dexron 4, and a couple of other things you can see on here. But the main thing is it encompasses Dexron 3, which is what this car takes. So we're going to add the 3 quarts of fluid very slowly because the transmission also has to breathe out of this tube. If you try to pour it in too quickly, it's going to gurgle back up and make a big mess. We definitely have the equipment that we need now, which is flush the transmission cooler as well. Okay. Yeah, we still got some time. Make a mess. You don't want to waste this stuff.
Me, my bad, bro.
I was.
Oh, okay.
So if you want to go a step further and flush out the oil that is in your transmission oil cooler, you'll need to locate these 2 lines that go from the transmission to the radiator, and you're going to need to disconnect these 2 hoses. There we go. That's a sexy shot. Now a little bit of oil might come out of here. I'm going to attach some vinyl tubing to both of these, and then I'm going to start the car up. I'm going to see which one of these is supplying fresh transmission fluid from the transmission. So we'll have a supply line, and then the other line will be the transmission fluid returning to the transmission. So we want to identify the supply line and then reconnect it. That way we can supply transmission fluid to the oil cooler and flush it into the bucket. You see fluid? Ha-ha! Success! So we see we got fluid supplied in the left tube. That means that this tube on the right is our return. So we're gonna go ahead and take this off, and we're going to reconnect our line to the transmission cooler. And we're gonna reconnect this hose here. And then our other hose, we're gonna redirect into the bucket. Only run your car for maybe 10 or 15 seconds at a time, drain about a ½ quart of fluid through it, and then go ahead and top it off with fresh fluid. That way you don't run your transmission dry. Continue doing this cycle until the fluid coming out is red and clean. So I'm gonna go ahead and pour the oil that we just flushed out of the cooler into the oil that we drained out of the pan. And at this point we can see the total oil that we drained out. So we are at 5 quarts. We put 5 quarts in. We can start this thing up, get it on level ground, and then fine tune our fluid level. So I'm gonna back the car up onto a level surface so we can check the fluid level. Oh.
Wheel chuck McGee.
Safety first, man. All right, make sure to move your wheel chock, I guess. So your car needs to be running so that you can check the transmission oil level. Pull it out, wipe it off, put it back in. So our fluid level is below the low mark, cold low and high, and this is hot low and high. So right now the car is cold. I backed it up, put it in drive, went through the gears, and we just need to add oil until it gets to the cold high mark. Then we can drive the vehicle around, get it nice and hot, leave it running, and make sure that it's in between the low and high marks on the hot side. And then this will be complete. So when you're topping off your transmission, just add a little bit of fluid at a time. That way you don't overfill it, because if you do overfill it, you're gonna have to drain a little bit out. You don't really wanna do that. Now also, when you add a little bit of fluid, the dipstick tube is where you add it. So then when you put the dipstick in there, you're gonna end up with oil all up and down your dipstick tube. In order to get an accurate measurement, you're gonna need to let the vehicle sit for a few minutes and let all that oil drain down the tube so that you can check it again. This can be a bit of a time-consuming process, but take your time. Once you get that done, put your dipstick back in and you're all done. So that's how you change your transmission fluid, and I hope you enjoyed the video.